Welcome back to the Ed Show from Minneapolis tonight. Thanks for watching. This NSA story, you know what it's doing? All it's doing is giving Republicans a chance to do what they do best. Trash President Obama for no reason. This morning, Dick Cheney, back at it, had the nerve to bring up the issue of credibility.
In terms of credibility, I don't think he has credibility. One of the biggest problems we have is we've got an important point where the President of the United States ought to be able to stand up and say, this is a righteous program, it's a good program, it's saving American lives, and I support it. And the problem is the guy has failed to be forthright and honest and credible on things like Benghazi and the IRS. So he's got no credibility.
Forthright, honest, credible? Come on, Dickster. I mean, some of us don't forget in America. I'm personally still waiting for Iraqi oil to pay all the bills. Dick Cheney is the man who took us into war with Iraq on false pretense. Dick Cheney is the man who was vice president when we got hit on 9/11. Apparently, he didn't get the presidential daily briefing of August 6, 2001. And Dick Cheney has the nerve to get out there and say, we have no credibility. The day he's picking at the Democrats as much as he is the president. Look, this guy never got close to killing Osama bin Laden. And the fact is that, and now Dick Cheney has the nerve to go on national television and say President Obama has no credibility. It's almost as outrageous as shooting somebody in the face and getting away with it. President Obama has done more to dismantle al-Qaeda in one term than Bush and Cheney did in 2 terms. He killed Osama bin Laden and has taken out a number of other high-ranking al-Qaeda members. And even in the midst of the NSA data collection outrage, President Obama is doing just fine. Apparently, Americans don't have a problem with it. His approval rating hasn't taken a hit, even during these so-called scandals. Americans trust this president. This is a man who has provided health care for 30 million uninsured people. He saved the American automobile industry, created 6.9 million private sector jobs. I mean, who do you want to believe? The backdrop of this entire conversation that the conservatives are presenting to this country is that President Obama is just a damn crook. And whatever we throw up there, you ought to believe, whether it's the IRS or Benghazi, no matter how many hearings we have, or AP story, or NSA. By the way, we're spying on everybody. I find it hard to believe that Dick Cheney would pin his credibility on a disgruntled employee who wants to be a hero and ends up in China. Martin Luther King didn't go to China. And neither did a lot of other heroes who wanted to see change in this country. They faced the music. And for more on this, I want to go to 2 of my friends who are very liberal, and we may disagree on this. Radio talk show host Tom Hartman, and also with us is Adam Green, co-founder of the Progressive Change Campaign Committee. Gentlemen, great to have you with us tonight. Tom, you first. 70% of our intelligence budget is handed out to private contractors. Is this dangerous? Should it be changed? Should we review this? Your thoughts, Tom?
Thank you, Ed. And by the way, happy Father's Day. It's great to see you again.
And to you, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a major problem. I mean, this is something that started in large part with the whole Reagan administration idea that government isn't the solution to our problems, government is the problem. Therefore, let's turn things over to private corporations. When government is doing spying, which we want government to do, and it's an entirely appropriate function, or other police functions, other state functions, there are systems for oversight of that are relatively transparent, at least within government, between the different branches of government, the legislative and the judicial. Once that gets outsourced to private for-profit corporations, first of all, you're laying off a whole bunch of government employees, probably tens of thousands or more, who are also union members in many cases. Secondly, you got CEOs skimming money off the top. But third, most importantly, under the Freedom of Information Act and other transparency requirements, these don't apply to employees of private contractors. So I think we've got a problem, Ed.
I think it's a question of loyalty. I mean, is there loyalty undoubtedly to the country or to profit and who they're working for? And do they take their job as seriously as someone who may be in uniform or trained by the government? I think these are fair questions. I think I've talked to a few lawmakers this week that are very disturbed by this percentage. Now, this morning, White House Chief of Staff Dennis McDonough highlighted the changes President Obama has made on the NSA program. Here it is.
The debate in 2004, 2005 was about a program that did not have any congressional involvement, did not have any judicial oversight, and then frankly did not have any of the internal administration-based checks and balances that we have today. When President Obama came into office in 2009, after being elected in 2008, he was pretty skeptical about the importance of these programs, so he took a very hard look at them. And as a result, we changed many things about how we oversee those programs. Congress now is much more robustly involved in these programs. You'll hear that from your next guest. Not just the intelligence committees, but also the judicial committees, and every member of Congress has been given a classified white paper to review to take a look at these.
Adam Green, do you buy what the Chief of Staff for the White House says?
Well, I mean, what he said was that Congress is informed, but that ignores the main point of what Edward Snowden did, which was reveal a crime by the NSA of lying to Congress. It doesn't help to have an informed Congress if that information is a lie. Ron Wyden, who's been on this show, and I assume you respect a lot, asked the Director of National Intelligence, does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans? The answer given by the NSA, quote, no, sir. Wyden followed up, and he said no again. And that's a problem. That means that the duly elected representatives of the American people, who we need to have oversight over basically a secret operation that's apparently spying on millions of us, they're being lied to and not being told the full information they need, and that's a problem. So you're absolutely right that Dick Cheney is the completely flawed person to be making any kind of critique about lying to the American people. But it is a real issue that the NSA did this. It's a real issue.
But the Chief of Staff of the White House says it's not the same techniques and program that was in place back in 2006 when the Cheney people were doing it, that President Obama has brought in checks and balances in his administration and congressional oversight that was not there before. Now, I have to respectfully challenge you. Are you willing to take Snowden's word over someone who's in the program? I mean, I think that's where we are right now as a country. Who do we believe? Do we believe a guy that goes to China, or do we believe someone who is actually involved in the program, or the President of the United States? Because that's where the buck stops. Your thoughts?
A couple points here. So one, I don't think you criticized the Wisconsin 14 when they left the state and used every tool at their disposal to make sure that the public got a full public debate and the issues were properly thrust into the public debate. If they had not left the state, there would have been no debate about Scott Walker's bad budget. This man had the courage to let Americans know that the government was
we're talking about national. We're not talking about the Wisconsin 14. Right. There's no parallel here. This is an issue of national security. This is an issue of state secrets. This is an issue of are we going to believe a rogue employee, or are we going to believe the President of the United States, who his Chief of Staff said this morning that they have implemented processes of oversight, which was backed up today by Mike Rogers, who's the intelligence chair in the House. He says that it's about phone numbers. It's not about the personal information that this guy is claiming it to be.
All I'm saying is that there's nothing inherently wrong with traveling in order to force a public debate. And, you know, that nothing's wrong with that. The broader point of, you know, who do we trust? The Obama administration has corroborated the main thing that Edward Snowden has said, which is that the government did collect data on millions or hundreds of millions of people, in contrast to what the NSA had previously told Congress. That's the core of this entire thing. We can argue around the edges, but the American people now know that the NSA lied to Congress, lied to our duly elected officials, and that's a real problem. And finally, we have a debate. As Elizabeth Warren said, finally we can have a debate.
Okay, Tom Hartman, how do you read this?
I have two thoughts on it, Ed. First of all, I don't think that the major scandal of Watergate was Deep Throat. And I don't think that the major scandal looking back on the Vietnam War was Daniel Ellsberg, although at the time they were in some ways characterized that way. I think at some point in the future we're going to look back and say Snowden, who apparently has committed a criminal act, at least has forced a really important conversation here. A. Yep. B, I think the other thing that's really important to remember is that up until 2001, we had courts that actually, I mean, the foreign intelligence courts, I mean, they were secret courts, but at least they were part of the judiciary system that oversaw government snooping. Bush and Cheney stopped that, and they stopped it illegally. Obama put that back into place. Now, I would say it's the protections are nowhere near as strong as they should be, and those courts should be improved, but having Dick Cheney criticize Barack Obama is insane.
There's no question about that. Gentlemen, we're out of time. I always appreciate having you on the program. Adam Green, Tom Hartman, thank you so much for being here tonight. Coming up.